How do you turn negative energy into positive energy? How do you transform however bad you may be feeling right now into feeling better or good? This video is in response to a comment that I got. Thank you very much for your thoughtful comment and question. And on a YouTube short that I did. And so I'm going to go into that. Now, the original YouTube short, I'm going to share my screen, is one in which I stated this. I stated that however out of shape you're feeling right now is your ticket to a 180-degree turnaround. Okay. And so, and one of my appreciated viewers asked at the end of this video, how do you do that? And that's a really good question. Is that something that I've done and it's something that I've helped other people do? And so I'm going to get right into this. Okay. Let me tell you that I replied to Anne in the comments about the steps that pretty much most people, if not all, need to take to transform negative energy into positive. Okay. And let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Try that. Back to tab. Anyway, you can see my screen. So here are the steps. Step 1 is to ask for help. Step 2 is to believe. And step 3 is to take consistent action. Now, those sound simple, but they are, but they're not so easy. So I want to dive into each one a little bit. We'll spend like, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes maximum on each one, but they do require some explaining. Okay. So let's talk about step 1. Ask for help. Okay. Now, this is the order that I took on my own journey, but I want to start by saying what I wrote here, that no two journeys are identical. However, fundamentally, you pretty much need to, wherever you're stuck, to ask for help. Now, that help could come from a book. It could come from a YouTube video. It doesn't necessarily have to be hiring a coach, therapist, or doctor, but you may need to do one of those things depending on where you're stuck. Okay. But the thing that most people, I think, miss is that they never ask for help. I know in my case, when I was at my worst in terms of health, I kind of convinced myself that I couldn't and shouldn't and would never ask for help. So that's a big thing for me. So yes, I'm a little biased with this first step, but I also see it all the time in other people. Okay. I see sometimes people ask for help and then maybe they get crappy help. Right. Let's just use diet, for example. Maybe you want to lose weight. So then you ask for help by signing up for some crazy fad diet. And then you end up falling off the wagon later on. Well, that's bad help. Okay. So then you lose faith, which we'll get to in step 2. But you need to keep asking for help. If it doesn't work the first time and you're stuck again and you can't do it on your own, you need to keep asking for help. Most of the time we don't ask. Okay. And so you may need to ask again, and you may need to ask different people. Okay. We cannot, when we're stuck, typically get out of where we are stuck with our own type of thinking and behavior that got us there in the first place. So asking for help is key. And it's not so easy to do, right? Especially if you've done it a few times and not made progress. Now, step 2, I wrote here, is believe. Okay. So as I wrote, belief is about buying in. It's not about believing in BS or false promises. It's not about, even in the beginning, of fully believing in the process 100%, because that takes a little time. There's a gap to close there. If you're in a very stuck place, okay, with your energy or your health, you're probably not going to fully believe right off the bat that everything will be great soon. Okay. And that's okay. That's normal. But there has to be a small percentage of openness. What there cannot be is a 100% closed-mindedness to the process. Otherwise, it will never work. So there needs to be some amount of buy-in, however small, in the beginning. I'm going to use my own historical first example, and then I have another example from later on about this. Okay. I want to stop sharing the screen for a minute while I talk about this. Stop sharing. So, when I was at my lowest point, at the point I mentioned earlier, and I had finally, gotten in front of some help. In this case, we're talking about therapy. Okay. I didn't believe, really, I didn't believe at all that I could be helped. Okay. So here comes the catch. it took a very smart therapist to be able to point out to me the error in my own logic of thinking, my own thought process, to open my eyes to the very small possibility. I mean, at that point, we're talking about, let's just say if I saw things 100% black, okay, to then when this guy said to me, I don't even remember exactly what he said to me. I remember the conversation. But what he did was he had took something that I had written and showed me how I was so clouded. My judgment was so cloudy. My vision, my view on things was so clouded. And once I saw that, okay, then I opened up the path to I didn't even believe that I could, feel better, but I became open to the possibility that I could. And that's where belief starts to creep in. We're talking about, like, if I could picture a dark room and then someone, just opens up the door a crack and some light starts to come in. That's what it felt like. But that little amount of light fills up the whole room, doesn't it? Right? It's quite bright. I mean, or it seems quite bright at first. Of course, it gets brighter and brighter. Okay, but there needs to be that crack in the light. That little bit of light needs to be allowed to come in to begin to fill the room more fully. Okay. Now, later on my own journey, there were times that I didn't believe in certain things, and belief is a constant work in progress. Okay. So, like, for right now, for example, bringing things forward, to where I am now, I'm working on growing a business, but you have to believe that you can grow the business. And if you go through the motions without believing that you can, then no one's going to believe you in your social media content or in your offers, right? Or in your DMs. And I see this all the time with clients, by the way. I want to stop talking about myself and talk more about what maybe something you might specifically relate to. But if you don't believe that, following my process, for example, for fat loss, is going to work, then you're probably going to self-sabotage along the way and not follow the process very long. Okay. So there has to be some belief. And usually that comes from, we typically tend to think that comes from results. And this is going to be a segue into step 3, but it doesn't just come from seeing results. It comes from something else. Let's go to step 3. It comes, going back to sharing my screen, from taking consistent action. Okay. So now, once you start to take consistent actions, okay, that's when things start to change. I mean, yes, things started to change with step 1 and step 2, because those are steps forward. However, then once you have that hand raised, and then you have that little bit of light shining in the room, at least, okay, now you need to start to take consistent actions. And this is where things start to become a self-fulfilling, self-growing circle. And I'm going to help you explain. This is perhaps the most important part. Okay. But these actions that I'm talking about are completely specific to you and whatever you're stuck with. So I'm going to go at the end of this video and go through a few examples. Okay. But we could be talking about diet, exercise, career, relationships, mental health and wellness. So there could be any kind of bucket or pillar or category that you might need to focus on first. Okay. But the point is, let's just say that you decide that you want to focus on your diet and physical health first. Okay. If you have a little bit of belief and you've asked for help, okay, the next thing that must come is consistent action. And so what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean starting and stopping diets, obviously, right? It has to be something you can stick to for enough time to grow that belief more and more, and of course to see results eventually. This is why crash diets, in the example of diets, now this is not a diet heavy video, but in this example, this is why crash diets mess up the consistent action and the belief and the step 1 of asking for help, because the crash diets, you see the result quick, but you cannot stick to those things. No one can eat 500 calories a day or 1,000 calories a day for very long. So then your action pattern gets broken. So actually what happens here is, this is a good example of why the results aren't always the most important thing. Yes, results are important, but having that body of work is what really, really is the most important. And I'll explain a little bit further. For the one example that I have on the screen here, for me, back when I was at my worst, state of health, I was depressed, and a consistent action, a simple one that I had to start doing at that time, even though I didn't feel like it, was just to go to work every day. And by doing that, after a few weeks, after a few months, I start to say, hey, now I'm the kind of guy who, even though I don't feel great, has gone to work every day for the last few weeks. So that started to build up my self-confidence. Let's move to a few other buckets of where consistent actions might fall in. I mentioned them just a moment ago, okay? But again, any of these buckets with the right kind of help, with some decent help and a little bit of self-belief, then taking consistent action in any of these buckets and they will grow. And this is the thing. Now, this is another video that I have and many other videos about the whole circle of life, pillars of life, modules of health, and how you grow them, all these things, but they're all connected. Yes, we're looking at these things typically separately, but they are all connected. And so what I'm trying to tell you is if your physical health is a 0 out of 10, you know, or a 1 out of 10, that's going to drag down all the other areas. But if you start to take consistent action and maybe move your physical health up a notch from 1 to 2 or 3, that is where the transformation of the energy that I started talking about at the beginning of this video comes in. That small nudge from 1 to a 2 in one of these areas will start to uplift all of the other areas. The energy is transferable. Positive energy is transferable. Negative energy is also similarly magnetic and drags each area. Too much negative energy in too much neglect or negativity in any one key area of life. I don't need to share screen for this. I'm going to go back to the main video. Too much negativity or energy in any one key area of life will drag the others all down. Similarly, a small increase in positivity in any one key area of life will uplift all the others, and that is contagious as well, equally contagious. So that is the premise of my theory, although I've seen it happen live in the real world with myself and others, about how to transform negative energy into positive. I think we've reached the end of this particular topic. There's definitely a whole other videos that I have on that whole like modules of health and how to grow each one. So I'll leave this here. If you have any questions, just comment below. I'm happy to help. And thank you for watching, and I appreciate you.